Alright, today I'm going to do a little soldering demo, and this is going to be my XT Keyboard Buddy project that I designed. What this project does is it takes a PS2 keyboard, which are pretty common, and translates it to XT, which is not so common for use with older computers because these older XT keyboards are a little bit harder to find. But I'm not going to get into too much about the project or demoing that aspect. I really just want to show how I would go about soldering something like this. So what we have are a few components. First is the main chip, which is an ATmega 328, and this is in a TQFP 32 pin surface mount package. We also have a couple 0805 resistors, a 10K and a 1K. We have a little resonator, surface mount resonator, and lastly we have a little LED 1206. Actually, not lastly, because there are a couple through-hole components, which are a DIN 6 as well as a DIN 5, which is what the keyboard connects to, and the output. So first I'm going to turn my iron on, and I'm going to warm that up to about 300°C to start with. I usually use pretty low temps for surface mount work, as low as I can get away with. So I'm going to clamp this guy into my little vise, and let me move some of these out of the way. So apologies, it's a little bit awkward trying to work with the camera. It's kind of in the way a little bit, but I hope I'm able to capture this sufficiently. So I'm going to start with, actually I think I'm going to start with the resonator, because it's a little bit in the way. It goes here, and it's a little bit in the way of the chip. So once I had the chip on, it would be a little bit harder to get to that. But I'm going to go ahead and flux the pads with some Chip Quick. By the way, I love this stuff. It works really good. I'm going to go ahead and position this guy. Rotate a little bit. Clean my iron and grab some solder. And the way I typically do these, I mean, with surface mount components, you need such little amount of solder that you really can't feed solder directly onto the parts. So what I typically do is I put a little bit of solder on the end of my iron. You can see that, just a little ball of it. And there we go. Position that guy on there pretty good. Actually, it looks pretty good. And typically what I'll do is I'll tack down one side. Probably need a little more flux. Not a big deal, we can fix that. But that side is tacked down, so I'm going to be careful. So I'm going to go ahead and tack down this other side here. There we go, clean that up. And before I go and do the other pins, I'm just going to check, make sure that they're lined up pretty well, and they are. So really the way I do it is I just add a little solder to the iron, And since the flux is being provided externally, there's no need to worry about because the flux inside the core of the solder flashes off right away. I would say that whole row is done, and I'll rotate it here. Let's repeat this for the other sides. Now, there is a trick you can do sometimes, is you put a little generous amount of solder on here, and if you have it fluxed well enough, which actually I might just add a little more to this side. There we go. You can actually do what they call drag soldering. Which works really good for surface mount stuff. Just like that. And all those pins done. Again, repeat for the other sides. This one's a little tricky because I got that resonator in there. There we go. And those all look good. And lastly, need a little more solder. There we go. And I'll take some photos of this, high resolution photos, when I'm done. But I'll usually go through with a jeweler's loupe, especially on small stuff like this, and confirm I have no bridging. It can be a little bit misleading with the flux that's in there. I do think I might have a bridge between these two. It's not a problem. Just got a little bit too much solder. Come in here with some wick. There we go. There we go. It looks pretty good. I see some spots. I don't think they're a problem, but alright, so next is the resistors and the LED. So what I'm going to do is put a little flux on the pads. Alright. And these are ready to be soldered. Now, if I had a bigger project, and I've done this before, I would use a solder mask. I'm sorry, not a solder mask, a solder stencil. And I would use solder paste and do more of a reflow. I do have a hot air reflow tool that I've used for this. But for small little ones like this, couple components, this works fine. Again, I'll just tack in one side. And I'll pre-apply flux to the board. And then apply the solder. around. Now since the pieces are in place, I can kind of just come through and apply heat and a little bit of solder. Looking for a good fillet. Got a little bit in the via there because it wasn't solder masked, but it's not a problem for this circuit. Those look pretty good. And so the last thing I have to do is the through-hole DIN jacks. Remove it from the board. I'm going to go ahead and place this and try to get it on camera. Actually, I think I'm going to do the smaller one first. And what I'll do, I'll get the vise out of the way. Kind of just place it and tack down one of the anchor points. And I might need to turn the heat up because these bigger pads are going to pull heat away quicker. But we'll see how this goes. And I'm using a really thin solder, so I have to feed quite a bit of it in. There we go. Let that cool for a moment. That's in. Go ahead and feed this one in. Now this one doesn't have the two side ears. When I designed it, there are several. So, quick note: when I designed the board, there's several different versions of these, and sometimes it has the anchor points, and sometimes it does not. I made the board kind of one size fits all, but the particular ones that I sourced, due to cost, did not have. And it's fine because there's not a lot of pressure. I'm going to bump the heat up just a little bit. I'm at 300. See, I'm going to go to 350. It's working, but I would like it to flow just a little smoother, and I think the additional heat will do that. That one's a ground pad, so I'll leave the heat on just a little longer. This one will go quick because it's just a trace. And these last two, I believe, without looking back at my design, I think they're just anchor pads. They're not connected to anything, ground or otherwise. Looks pretty good. Swing over to the other side. Again, I gotta feed in quite a bit to this pad. Don't disturb that while it cools for a second. Alright, now I'll bump my heat back down to do these smaller ones. there you have it. The last thing I'll do is clean that up with some flux cleaner. And I'll take some high resolution photos, close in macro, so you can get an idea of the connections themselves, but that's how I go about it.